point. We're going back to the mother's basement today. So that's going to be
our old
fun
friend.
time. Yep.
Our old good friend.
Yep.
Maybe not.
Sorry, I was just gonna text about a thing.
Who has a friend?
Who has a friend? Yeah, we're going back to Mother's Basement and following up with our episode on Overlord from Anime Matt. We were gonna do a new Overlord video or a different Overlord video.
Yeah, this is nowhere new. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
Yeah, well, Mother's Basement hasn't been uploading anything particularly interesting as of late.
To us,
so,
at least.
Yeah.
To do a
us
video
anyway,
on.
in terms of covering. So, yeah, I guess we'll just see what Mother's Basement thinks makes Overlord so great.
That immediately grab you with their unique premises. Overlord is not one of those. By the time it came out in summer of 2015, isekai anime and trapped in an MMO shows in particular were already well past the point of saturation.
We're not going to mention the fact that Sword Art Online is an isekai. I think
we're not,
covered that enough already.
I think, yeah, like, we need to have a counter. A permanent counter on the overlay. That's every time.
Yeah, no, an overlay
somebody
misidentifies isekai because it happens so often.
Yeah, just go back through all the other episodes and find everyone that's done it. And
well, there is the
permanent counter.
There is the slight thing that he separated isekais and trapped in an MMO.
Yeah, so we'll give him credit, kind of loosely. We'll give him a little bit of credit. He gets a little bit. So yeah, let's keep going.
And many of them were fairly criticized for their overpowered heroes who rendered every conflict a foregone conclusion. Overlord's elevator pitch is basically
Danmachi isn't.
Oh yeah.
Neither.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, they started the fantasy world, don't they?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, man,
Look, you gotta get that,
anything with fantasy is isekai. Lodos Wars is isekai.
Look, you gotta get that hot Danmachi footage you got from Crunchyroll into the video. All right, you gotta put it in there, right?
But he's criticizing it.
Well, it doesn't matter.
He's a terrible advertiser.
Well, I mean, that's already established, but... Oh, man. Alright, let's keep going.
More of that, but the protagonist, the Demon King this time. Itself a pretty overplayed concept in fantasy anime. And following Spring's wildly popular Danmachi while competing against the more unique, at least on paper, fantasy shows Gate and Roku no Yusha, it seemed like a dud in the making. At least that's what I assumed at the start of that season. But you know what they say about assumptions. 3 years later, Overlord is the only one of those shows to have received a proper sequel, though Danmachi...
Yeah, Overlord's doing pretty fucking good, to be honest. I hear from people that it's very popular in Japan, actually.
And you heard from me that it's getting a 4th season.
Yeah, exactly. So it must be fucking popular if it's gonna become the new Naruto.
Yeah, apparently it's ordered, as in studio make the anime.
Do it. So Overlord's pretty popular. It's pretty good.
I don't get this putting it in the same category as Danmachi though.
I don't either, but then again, it's Mother's Basement, so what are you gonna do?
I didn't watch Roku no Yusha. Was there even enough material to make further seasons after the first one?
I don't know.
I have no idea because I haven't watched it either.
Because I know Gate apparently sold pretty well over there, but I'm not sure how much material they would have for a second season if they're just kind of holding off on that.
Yeah, and you see, that's part of the thing, because Overlord's, how many volumes is it at?
13, I think.
13. So, and the anime's covered roughly what in terms of material?
Let's see. You got Man in the Kingdom. I believe it finished on 9.
Right. So there's
there's
enough.
It ended. The 3rd season ended on the battle. Oh yeah, the Battle of East Egg.
Yeah.
And that is The Magical Kingdom. I'm breaking my head here. I believe it's the 9th novel.
So we
Or
could say
9
like,
or 12,
so we
10.
could simplify that to like just past halfway, ish.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more, like quarter past halfway or something. So there's probably enough material to squeeze out a 12 episoder, maybe.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you could just make it a little bit slower, all the shit that happens after the big fight is plenty for a season. Maybe make it 12 episodes, half core. All these Overlord seasons are half core, I think. Or no, one core.
So.
12 is one core.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's one core. Yeah, but no, I reckon. Yeah, I reckon there's probably enough to warrant another one. So, yeah, Overlord. So this is let's see where Mother's Basement goes.
Does have a spin-off out and a proper
Oh my god, how many times is he gonna fuck up? How many times is he gonna bring up fucking Damachi? God damn. I almost expect him to be like, and you can watch Damachi on Crunchyroll.com.
Use my link to get 75% off a subscription.
Yeah, totally.
I was right, by the
way.
The third season ends on volume 9, and there's now 13 out. So yeah, you could do a good season.
Nice. Yep, sounds good.
Being split into 2 cores for a longer runtime, Gate fizzled out fast, and I am willing to bet that you only just remembered that Roka no Yusha exists. On that note, looking at
the only thing I remember about this was that chick with the flower in her head.
Yeah, she was an absolute nut.
I know nothing else about what this show is or what it's about. I just know that I have seen some really good artwork of that girl.
I know. The show is basically a murder mystery in a fantasy, put in a fantasy jacket.
Yeah. Other than that, I have no idea what it is because I didn't watch it. So
murder mystery.
Anyway,
that summer's chart just reminded me that Charlotte's a thing, and damn, that is a series that really deserves a full video teardown. But not today. Despite an underwhelming premise and somewhat lackluster visual presentation, Overlord proved to be an overwhelmingly good time. And
what's wrong, Mother's Basement? Are the CG skeletons too hardcore for you?
It seems kind of unfair to judge the visual presentation specifically on the CGI skeletons because that's such a minor facet of it. Like, it's a bad point.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but it is still a minor facet.
Yeah, I have to agree because I think that the 2D side of the animation's pretty solid for the most part. I can't think of any time when the animation was,
I can't think of a time where it just, ran off of a fucking cliff. What was it, Grimgar, that ship with, the storyboards in the final episode or something?
Oh, fuck, I don't know. I don't remember. But, the CG skeletons, I think, are definitely a point where you could go, yeah, that's kind of shit, but it's not like Berserk, because Berserk was, the whole show. Right.
Yeah, and I can
the whole show was bad CG, whereas with Overlord it's every now and then you'll see a shitty looking goblin or something.
Yeah, I mean, I can stomach the skeletons. I think the Death Knight 3D model is pretty good, actually. The goblins are terrible.
Yeah. And the goblins walking in. That's the one that always gets me, is the goblins just walking into people and people just flying. That was just fucking retarded. God damn.
And the humans are okay.
Yeah. It's not the best, but it's it's got its charm, I guess. The 3D has its charm, right?
I think it's sometimes it doesn't do this intentionally, but it's a good, basically defining line between human and Ain's world, where you got a 2D drawn head, and Heinz does magic to it, and now it's a 3D model. But that's me looking too deeply into it.
Possibly.
All right. Well, let's keep going.
And even though this new split season is entering into an even more oversaturated isekai market than what it faced 3 years ago, I'm still having more fun with it than just about anything else that's currently airing, although part of that is my very strong bias toward fantasy shows. So what is it that's given this anime its surprising staying power? And what makes it stand out from the endless sea of other isekai and MMO anime?
All right,
it's time to find out.
What makes Overlord unique?
Let me think.
Who it follows, in particular, the fact that it follows a more villainous crew, as it were, because they are straight up villains in that setting. That is how it works. Like
the fact the protagonist is actually an adult.
That's
something because technically he is salaryman, so he is more of an adult than a lot of isekai. Like, a lot of them tend to be, teenager, like early 20s, right? Whereas we can assume that Ainz is possibly a little bit older. Possibly.
I would also say just the varied cast of characters as well, because, it's fairly diverse in how it's laid out, because...
It's very character and world driven. It's rather than being very, like, plot driven, it's very much characters interacting and how those characters interact within the situations they are put into. But more than a lot of other types of shows where you'll have, like, the end goal, right? Like, Sword Art Online's end goal, to use that, right, was get out of the game, right? And then you'll have other isekai where it'll be like, okay, what's the end goal of this particular one? So, with Overlord, it's a bit more about, you've got this colourful cast of characters. Let's see how they interact with the world. Let's, see how they interact with each other. And that's where a lot of the interest comes from with Overlord. And I think a lot of people are not into that, which is fine, but also a lot of people don't realise that, so they go into Overlord expecting something that it's not, which I think causes a lot of people to not get it. But that's just my assessment, though. What about you, Ali?
To make a terrible example, or if an analog, is basically some kind of Star Trek. Sometimes cool action, most of the time lots of talking.
Yeah, that's actually it's not a terrible comparison, actually. I mean, I don't watch Star Trek.
I mean, unless you're watching Discovery, in which case they overblow the action and kind of miss the point of the series.
Yeah, like, the idea behind, like, because that's how I've always kind of because I've viewed it, like, Star Wars is for the action, Star Trek is for the...
Star Trek is for the actual sci-fi.
Yeah, so...
Maybe Stargate, if you want more action and in your sci-fi.
Like Stargate's like somewhere in the middle.
Stargate is my favorite isekai.
Yeah, the best isekai. Oh fuck! I haven't watched Stargate in so long. Fucking.
I've been rewatching it recently. It's been fun.
Oh fuck! I gotta get back into that shit because fuck! I used to watch it as a kid.
Don't watch the newer series that came out. It's actually pretty awful.
Never watched the newer series.
Wildly off topic. You mean Universe or the reboot miniseries?
It was the one. It came out like 2017 or something.
That would probably be Universe.
The last one I vaguely remember actually happening was like they were on a ship.
Yeah, Universe.
Yeah, like it was something to do with a ship. I don't know.
People did not like that.
We're so off topic. I was just about to be like, but Battlestar Galactica though, and then go even further off the topic. But yeah, I reckon what makes Overlord unique is just the fact that it's more character driven. I think to boil it down into a basic sort of like pinpoint would be
I just want to point out this is off topic, but like the isekai tag on Analyst is really awful because for some reason it includes some of the Monogatari series and Hunter x Hunter for some reason.
That's user review or user tag suggestions.
Yeah, it explains a lot.
That kind of like the fact that people think Hunter x Hunter is an isekai should be very concerning. Oh fuck! But anyway,
Well, hopefully those people won't breed.
Yeah, let's continue.
What's so great about Overlord? If you asked me to name one thing about Overlord that I love the most, my answer would come easily. The characters. Between villagers, adventurers, criminals, politicians, noblemen, and all of the bosses and monsters in Nazarick, this show has an absolutely massive cast of
Just a funny thing, when he said politicians, he had a shot of the villain, criminals.
Yeah.
Subliminal messages.
Something I've noticed as well is the character designs in general. Not just for like the main characters, but for some of the side characters have also been pretty good. Like, it's not like your normal... Like, there are obviously you've got your generic soldier, generic... generic man, right? But a lot of the more, like, relevant side characters tend to have very distinct designs and personalities and abilities
the lizard man
and such. Like, yeah, the lizardman, and then you've also, like, I'm thinking, like, the criminals, as you mentioned, right? All of those criminals, like, I remember, like, even though you don't see them for that long, they all, you can see them and they're like, oh, that guy looks pretty cool. Oh, that girl's a dancer girl. She's pretty cool, you know? I mean, they get their faces caved in, but like, you get to, like, the character designs are pretty unique, I guess, distinct from one another. Like, it's very rare that you get, generic men, which I think is something that the show should be praised for. So, let's continue.
And supporting characters. And while I can't name all of them off the top of my head, there are dozens that I can recognize at a glance because they stand out as unique, interesting individuals. Especially the many faces that populate the Great Tomb of Nazarick. In lore, each Guardian of Nazarick's personality and design was lovingly crafted by one of the members of Ainz Ul Gon, reflecting to some extent those players' unique tastes and personalities, and you really feel that from how they act and express themselves in the anime. The writers really got into the head of the characters who wrote these characters. They're basically a pack of top-tier Power Rangers villains, each with their own funny quirks and distinctive personality traits that set them apart from the rest, all jockeying to curry favor with the Supreme Overlord, who is also a fantastic character in his own right. Unlike almost every other isekai...
So, not finding much to disagree with at the moment.
No, but I did... It's the minor nitpick, but he says the writers have done a good job, but it's one man.
Yeah, it is. And the show has multiple scriptwriters, sure, but
I think that comes down to a common problem we find with a lot of these YouTubers, and I think we need to make it like a proper term, right? Like anime vacuum syndrome or something.
Anime vacuum syndrome.
Like,
that sounds very lewd, like accidentally lewd.
But that's what it is, right? It's the fact that a lot of these anitubers view everything in a vacuum. They view anime as like, because he mentions the writers, right? And it's like, that's the, like when you think about like a show or a movie or something, yeah, there's possibly more than one writer. But in terms of these adaptations, the main writer is the guy that wrote the fucking book, right?
But Jeff here knows that Overlord is written by one guy. He's going to promote the novels on Bookwalker, etc.
Exactly.
Which is why he's dumbing down something that he's going to explain later anyway.
Exactly. That's why I think it's like a mental block or something. Like they have this mental issue, which is why I call it a syndrome, right? Where they view everything through this tunnel vision, right? Everything is viewed through the lens of anime, just being anime, and not, you don't factor in the books, you don't factor in anything else, right?
Because that will make the video
weird to me.
It will make the video too complicated.
No.
Make it too complicated, and you can't
How
make
complicated?
50...
How complicated? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how complicated would it be to change the word writers to writer? how complicated
writer.
would that make the video?
Let's ask the professional Anituber.
Oh man.
Blocked.
Yeah, blocked.
Damn. Also, one of the interesting thing with the ice, the four-armed little ice thing, that's actually based off of a D&D monster.
Cocutus.
He's very cool.
Yeah,
I like him. He's cool.
Yeah, it's based off of an ice devil.
He had a really good a good bit of development during the Lizardman arc. Actually, I quite enjoyed him.
Oh yeah, no, he's cool as fuck.
Yeah. He actually had a really good character thing. It was really good. So yeah, let's continue.
Anime protagonist Suzuki Satoru, the sad Japanese salaryman behind Momonga, aka Ainz-Ul Gon, comes off as genuinely socially awkward, the kind of guy you'd believe has no friends in real life and spends all his free time in an MMO. And he'd honestly make for kind of a crappy wet blanket protagonist if it weren't for what I think is Overlord's most ingenious plot conceit. Because of his situation, Momonga is forced to roleplay, which is weirdly uncommon in this subgenre that's supposedly focused on role-playing games, whereas, say, Kirito is presented to the audience as a genuine badass both in-game and IRL, Overlord repeatedly reminds us that Momonga is just some loser pretending to be a badass, only slightly aided in that effort by his suppressed emotions, which makes the OP bullshit that he regularly pulls off feel more endearing and fun than the eye-rolling, unironic wish fulfillment of similar shows. It's genuinely interesting and often funny.
It is a very interesting point. That he's playing the character because he doesn't. He's got to make sure his fucking followers don't turn on him.
Why is it that all these people just seem to use only Sword Art Online as a comparison when they're trying to prop
It's because it's popular.
Yeah.
It's because it's popular.
Yeah, but you think if you want to sell Overlord to people, or if you want to actually praise it, you would actually compare it to something of at least equivalent quality and see what it does
Danmachi?
better.
Well, I haven't watched that one. I just assumed it's awful by looking at it, but
it's fine. It's nice. It's fun.
See,
I have very low expectations when I go into these shows.
But yeah, no, I think yeah,
It just seems like they're taking the path of least resistance, which I mean is fair when you're just trying to push out something for brainlets anyways, so
pretty much. But so far in the video, I can't necessarily say, other than like the nitpicky type stuff, right? Like, there's nothing I can particularly disagree with. I think he's
because he doesn't say anything, and he doesn't really even say that much. It's like,
yeah, he's not. He's like, again, it's like he's stating stuff that's mostly knowledge, fact, and he's not wrong, like wrong man bad. He's, like, he might be incorrect in a couple of things, but he's not like that bad. It's just kind of like, yeah, all right, I guess.
Yeah, good characters.
Yeah, good characters.
Yeah, we agree. Everybody has had a discussion about this, and everybody is just kind of, in agreement on this.
Yeah.
What interesting thing are you bringing to the table right now that no other video on YouTube has done?
Alright, let's keep going.
To see a low-level salaryman take on the role of a high-level evil overlord, pretending to be
what
he
it is?
imagines a...
Pause for a second. You know what it is? It's just made so that the audience can be in agreement. It's not meant to challenge the audience. It is just there so that the audience is like, I agree with this. I'm also smart.
It plays into people's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people, this is actually something that I know Digibro is very critical of, is the idea of watching reviews and YouTube videos to reaffirm your own position. Right? So you'll watch stuff that you're going to agree with in order to feel like you're more correct than what you might be. It's an issue that happens a lot more with reviews in the traditional sense of, oh, this is shit, this is bad, right? Or this is good, this is I like this thing, so I'm going to watch. Honestly, even though it's off topic, the best example of this is The Last Jedi, right? Where there is like distinctly two fucking sides, right? You have the people that think The Last Jedi is objectively fucking terrible, which it is, and then you have the side that's like, but I liked The Last Jedi though. So I like The Last Jedi though. But these videos of these reviewers that I agree with them because they like the thing, and you get a little bit of that on the objective side of things as well. But I feel like it's the same kind of thing, right? Where it's people just reaffirming their biases via watching, like, appeal to authority, right? This anti-tuber with X amount of subscribers agrees with me, therefore I can reinforce my own belief in my own thing rather than have it challenged and go, maybe I'm not 100% on that.
See, this is why Anime Matt's videos are fucking great, because he always says something so wrong that I actually have my beliefs challenged, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
I can. Should I throw out a controversial statement? Something you can challenge.
What? Oh, here we go.
Overlord.
Okay.
Overlord is a commentary on the Japanese salaryman mentality.
Where's your proof in that?
Because Ein's situation hasn't really changed in this new world.
No, he got it. He's in the manager position now.
Yeah. So
he got promotion. He got a promotion. He got a promotion.
He's constantly. It's basically how.
Yeah.
Overlord is how you feel at work. Constantly afraid that you're doing something wrong. Constantly afraid to disappoint, etc.
I think you need to make this into an anime tuber video. Because I actually think you're on.
And then we can do your
here.
video.
No.
Yeah, and we can become meta as fuck.
Yeah, I was actually talking with Unknown in voice chat like a day or two ago, and he was like, "Oh, a YouTuber you should cover? You should cover this channel called Pulls on Point."
We're gonna start making fun of ourselves.
Yeah, maybe as an April Fool's Day joke, we'll do one of our own videos.
The first one. Terrible overlay.
Yeah, we'll do the first video.
We'd have to call it something funny like past cringe or something like that.
Yeah, past cringe. But no, now that you mentioned that, Ellie, I actually kind of think you might have a point there, that it is a commentary on Japanese work ethic and such, and the idea of, the overlord position being very similar to, managerial work.
But isn't that just kind of like, isn't that just kind of a general fear? Like, even in the West, like, when you're in any position where you're expected to take any form of responsibility for your action, you have the same kind of pressures.
Yeah,
my counter to is that other isekais don't have this. So this is...
No, they don't.
So, and I wouldn't go maybe as far to say a commentary, but basically it's heavily influenced by the workforce, being in the workforce.
I can see the through lines, right? I can see the point, right? I think it's a very interesting point, actually. I might actually, I should, if I ever bump into Joe again, I might actually bring that up with him, because I think it might be an interesting topic to talk about. But yeah, no, I can agree with that. I think that's, considering the fact that the Japanese work ethic is very well known for being, hell.
Hierarchical, do because you have to do, not because it's smart to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a slightly more personal version of working in the game industry in the US. Same shitty hours and pay, just, your boss doesn't take you for drinks afterward.
Yeah, pretty much.
Your boss just fires you when the game's released.
Riot Games. Alright, let's keep going.
Confident, capable, and charismatic leader would be like, going along with the perceptions and whims of his more capable henchmen like Albedo and Demiurge without having any real idea of what he's doing. I mean, it takes him to the start of the show's third core to realize that he's been accidentally taking over the world. But he has to keep it up, because if he lets slip to all of these overpowered monsters who think he's a literal god, that he's just a guy, who knows what could happen. And the fact that they undeservedly hold him in such high regard is a source of some pretty stellar comedy, like how Demiurge is constantly coy about his plans when Momonga asks him because he knows his mighty, brilliant Overlord is already 12 steps ahead of him, when in reality the Overlord is only vaguely aware that there's a plan at all. The series clearly
Demiurge is fucking great. I fucking love him so much.
Best son.
Yeah, best son.
You know, this would be an interesting observation if it wasn't directly stated in the show at some point.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty like obvious to anyone that's watched the show, right? It's not. Again, he's not saying anything particularly new here, right? And he's not. Like, I would have assumed that a video that's called "What's So Great About Overlord" should be trying to sell people on Overlord, right? Why is Overlord good, right? What makes it a good show, right? And so far we're about 5 minutes. We've got 10 minutes left-ish, right? And so far what he's mostly said is good character, good.
And funny Demiurge.
Funny, yeah. He's essentially just said good characters be good, and that's, you know, like you could have probably have made this point in about half the time that he has made it.
Typical Mother's Basement does everything in double time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Half time.
That's the main complaint I have right now. Is just like you could have cut this down quite a bit and moved on to other points. So let's see if he does. Move on to other points.
Recognizes how fun this dynamic is because in the second arc it has him start role-playing as a second character, the stoic adventurer Momon. He's a weak, regular human pretending to be a spooky, scary skeleton,
Weak?
Well, I mean,
weak!
Compared to him using magic rather than just buffing his fucking
still,
swords.
Well, yeah, but still, like, weak!
He's still the strongest adventurer in the.
I mean,
look,
when you're like, when you're like level 10 in like Dungeons and Dragons and you start multi-classing, it's like, okay, compared to before, your new class is probably going to be a little on the weaker side, just a little bit.
Yeah, but again, like, weak.
I'm only two-shotting these things. I'm not one-shotting them.
Oh God. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to stop on there because I was like, wait, what? That's not true in the slightest. He's not RPing a weak character. He's like he cuts fucking goblins in half, right?
Ogres.
He's cut ogres. Yeah, he's cutting fucking ogres in half, and all the other adventurers are like, shit, dude. Fucking hell. Alright, let's give you
to be a strong, heroic human. Fellow adventurers look to him as a hero among heroes, a man of unparalleled strength and courage, even though he's actually just a ridiculously overleveled mage with 0 sword skills tossing around his blades like blunt objects. And also he's a straight-up supervillain who puts all other evils in the world to shame, but that's developing slowly. This dynamic proves to be very entertaining, especially when the Overlord gets confused about his roles, and Momon intentionally handicapping himself as well as his sidekick Nabe allows the show to create some slightly less one-sided fights without having to pull a foe as strong as a Nazarick floor boss out of its butt, something that's only happened once so far when Shaltir was brainwashed. But it's the large supporting cast that really pulls the brunt of the weight in keeping Overlord's action fun. From important recurring heroes and antagonists to one-off bit characters, the massive side cast of this show is distinctive and well-defined enough to serve as...
I have one criticism of the video where he picks his shots wrong. Or maybe he does it intentionally, where he just had the moment where he said one-shot characters and recurring characters, and he switched it around. the shot where the people in the shot where he said recurring characters were one-shot characters, and a shot where he said one-shot characters were recurring characters.
I would assume that it's probably just error. Like I wouldn't say it's deliberate. But then again, it's
no, he didn't put any thought into that.
Yeah, it's don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity. It's most likely he.
Well, I'm not saying malice. I'm just saying it's
well,
wrong.
yeah, I know it's not. I know it's not malice, but that's the best way I could describe the phrase. So it's the same concept. But other than that, he's just going over what we've already really covered, like the side characters being really good, really defined, that kind of thing. So.
The main casts of like 4 other anime. Just between the Blue Roses, the Eight Fingers, and the Knights of the Riestes Kingdom, you've got the foundation of a pretty solid full-length fantasy anime, or role-playing campaign for that matter, yet Sebas clears out all of the potential bosses in a couple minutes on his day off. That approach to storytelling really helps to sell how insanely powerful the denizens of Nazarick are compared to the rest of the world. This is a fantasy land full of capable, driven heroes and villains, yet all of their incredible abilities and unique backstories are mainly used to job for Nazarick. And while having main characters that insanely overpowered can easily remove the stakes from a story, and does here to a certain extent because there is rarely any doubt as to who will win a fight, Overlord's action is still fun to watch because all of the people they're killing are, for the most part, very hateable, which changes the attitudes that we have towards these fights from, oh, Sebas is gonna one-punch some more dudes, or boy, I wonder if this Clementine chick will go down in 1 sword swipe or 2, into, oh, you don't know who you just messed with, fuck them up, and facing off against
cringe aside,
so the thing he stated about stakes, it was more or less kind of implied with the whole fight against Shoutier, and this is something that I found was really interesting in this story, that in order for her to be brainwashed, the person behind it had to themselves be fairly strong. So I really don't think they necessarily undersell the stakes in Overlord. They just kind of keep it in the background as kind of a looming threat.
Yeah, there's clearly some shit out there that's quite strong.
Has any of the videos we covered of Overlord have they mentioned that aspect of the Shoutier fight?
Not particularly.
And how important it is to the narrative.
No, I don't remember that. I mean, it's mentioned maybe in this video, so that Shoutier has been brainwashed, but not that it's basically a fear for the next 10 novels.
And it's also and it's one of the main reasons why Ainz initially didn't, go out full guns blazing.
No, he's paranoid as hell because of that stuff.
Yeah, like he already knew before Shoutier got brainwashed that he should be cautious about that kind of thing, right? So
and then after Shoutier, he was just shut it all down. Everybody, body systems, ring remove. If you're out and about, rings are gone.
Time to go in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, reporting on the hour.
Shut it down. Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting, interesting aspect. And there are definitely, because I mean, when was the last time we saw that fucking like white and black haired chick that showed up for like a second? Like,
I mean,
she was around for like we had a couple of scenes with her initially, like what season? Season 1 or 2.
Black and white haired with the Rubik's Cube.
Was that her? Rubik's Cube? See, I don't even know how to properly describe what she looks like because she hasn't been in the show that much.
Well, the Rubik's Cube chick who wants to have the strongest baby ever was in the first 10 seconds of the third season and never again.
Exactly. So there's clearly some shit in the background.
Yeah,
that exists, right?
I know what it is because it's in the novels, but there are so much more in novels. Like you have met the Dragon Kingdom, the Queen of the Dragon
so
Kingdom,
we've
and
got a ways to go, right?
And you got the war with the slain theocracy and the war with the elves and how that's going, and the king of the elves we've met and how he's a kind of a dick.
It's gonna be good. Sounds like it's gonna be great shit.
And we got the dwarves and the mole men and etc.
So going back to the stakes though, I feel like there's actually an interesting comparison to be made with One Punch Man. Because One Punch Man is very similar in that you have a character that essentially can just solve all of the issues with a punch, right? Like Iron solves it with magic, but let's just assume that similarities here, right? There's not a lot of tension in terms of One Punch Man because obviously One Punch Man can just fuck up anything that he comes across. But similar to Overlord, One Punch Man is very character driven. You have all of these very interesting heroes and all these interesting characters and how they interact with each other and their fights between each other, right? Like the Goro, even though the animation was kind of shit in Season 2, the stuff with Goro fighting all of the heroes while he's injured was fucking awesome. And there was a lot of tension there because not only is he injured and he's trying to survive the fight, but the heroes themselves are up against this like monolithic fucking monster, right? So there's some comparison to be had in terms of the stakes, right? Where it's because you are lacking that sort in terms of the main character stakes, right? The side characters then start to become more of the thing, right? There's clearly some you like these characters, you don't want to see them get killed or brainwashed or hurt or whatever. And I feel like that's something that could be explored a little bit. And another reason why I think Overlord is really good. Again, it comes back down to the characters, right? Like most of the points.
Yeah, I think
come back to it.
It's very different, I think, still. I mean, it's similar in that overpowered main character, but how it's treated is very different.
Yeah.
Where I really think in One Punch Man, it's really man versus the system. Going really, really short, cutting some corners here. Man versus the system. While Overlord is the world versus man.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So One Punch Man is really about the system and how it works and how
it's about society.
Yeah, it's about society. Well,
we live
and Saitama is living outside of society, and you can see how living outside of the society works. While Overlord is really about here's a thing: how does the world react? Not even society, because you have lizard men and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. So there are clear differences, but I just think in terms of like contrasting the stakes and how stakes are handled within the two shows, I think there is a through line that can be drawn between the two because of similar concepts. But yeah, let's keep going.
It's the main cast who min-max their murdering stats while putting 0 points into empathy, they generally get fucked up pretty hard. On the flip side, we often see the Guardians or Momonga come up against good people who we want to root for, in which case we get to root for an underdog and feel the tension of hoping they'll find some way to survive and fight another day, because we know there's pretty much no way they'll come out with a win. Hell, the entire first arc of the second season pulls the rug out from under us by casting our protagonist and his henchman Cocytus as mostly unseen villains, while we follow the struggle of a noble lizard man hero to unite the feuding tribes of his swampland home and fend off an encroaching evil. We get to know the main cast of lizard warriors and a surprisingly adorable lizard waifu pretty darn intimately before it even becomes clear that it's Nazarick who they're fighting. It's honestly a pretty clever trick of story structure. First, we start out rooting for the lizards to win against the undead army, or maybe for Momon to
this video a little bit. He said he introduced the lizard man. He said the Nazarick is being an unseen villain. Done. You don't need any of this anymore.
But Ali, we gotta get that video to 15 minutes so that I can get the maximum amount of ad revenue in the video.
3 ads, no, 4 ads. One in the beginning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes. Like
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, gotta get that maximum.
And
ad
in video.
Where's our
ads?
I mean, we could get quite a few.
We should
disappointed.
Sure, there's some Teespring store or whatever. Etsy crafts.
What fucking quotes would we even put on a t-shirt? I know one. We'd have let's see where we're going with let's see where they're going with this.
No, you have a bingo chart. That shit.
Yeah.
When we do the past cringe video, that's when we decide what gets put on Teespring shirt. Who the fuck would wear something like that?
We need to do the highlight reel. Go through.
So sell it. We need to sell it.
Yeah,
Patreon.
Right. Yeah, right.
And all of this. But anyway, I think
if we sell out, that's it. I'm gone walking if we're selling out.
No, if you're selling out, you're coming with us.
No.
Yeah, man. Think about all the money we can make. We can get sponsored by
the $5. Oh God, no.
No. Even more topical. We could get sponsored by Loot Crate. I hear Loot Crate's been looking for some new advertisers lately since they've gone bankrupt. Oh no. Alright.
But anyway, I think he introduced the Lizard Man and what their deal with their relationship with Nazarick. That explanation was fine. It was concise. It was lots of things, and most of them
also
were
speaking
good.
of that CG, we'll get a good example of that CG on the pause right now.
Yeah, I mean it's skeletons and it's still image now, so I can't really.
It's acceptable compared to the goblins.
It's not too bad.
But anyway,
I'm looking at Lizardman.
I think Mother's Basement is talking too much about this lizard arc.
Yeah, he is. But let's continue.
Show up and save them, and then when it becomes clear who they're facing, we shift to hoping that Nazarick will recognize their skill and spirit and either spare or recruit them. In the second arc, the Blue Roses and Knights of Riestes take center stage, with Sebas taking on the combat role of a badass mentor who can step in if things get hairy, and the Overlord, again, mostly unseen until the end of the story. Between Climb and Brain, we get plenty of opportunities to see genuine underdog.
Something's going on. Oh, there we go. I don't know what was going on there. It was lagged.
But anyway, we don't also need to every detail of the human. Similar conflict on the human side. Just say it also happens with the human.
Yeah, again, you could easily cut this video in half. Easily cut this in half, and it would still be the same video. Like, again, it's a common problem with Mother's Basement. Is he's way too long-winded.
He makes points either everyone agrees with or a good portion of people agrees with, and then just kind of doesn't make anything new and restates things.
Yeah, I also
Where's
said
the hot takes? Where's the hot takes, Jeff?
Oh, the hot takes is gonna be when we cover his fucking separate the art from the artist video. That's where the fucking hot takes is gonna be. Because we're gonna do that one day. Because that video, man, oh fuck, that's a video.
Yeah, but I think that Mother's Basement's real problem is that he basically makes every point twice.
Yeah, he needs to stop.
Good characters, those are good characters. They're pretty good characters. The Murga is funny. Here's a moment. Here's funny. Here's another moment where it's funny. Yeah. Here's a conflict between the good guys and bad guys, and Nazarick are the bad guys, and then you root for the bad guys, and then go for the good guys. And there,
here's the same thing. Yeah.
But then with humans.
Yeah, it's totally a different point. But anyway, let's keep going.
Characters overcome difficult odds in some solid, creative fight scenes, while Sebas gets to carry them as an unbeatable badass. And while up to this point he's been a mostly one-note background character, Sebas sees a lot of growth during this arc as well, and ends up being the heart of the story. He stumbles into new, emotionally challenging territory when he catches feelings for a human girl, which means
Sebas is a fucking bro. He is the chattest of the chats. Fucking Sebas is fucking great.
Yeah, no, his when I was watching season 2 with some friends when I was airing, the guy who I was watching who actually read the novel was like, yeah, no, the Sebas arc that's coming up is great.
Yeah, he's fucking cool as fuck. I love Sebas. Not kind of on a conceptual level. I just like Sebas.
I mean, he takes the stereotypical, the most stereotypical butler character ever. Yeah. Sebastian.
Yeah.
How more butler can you be? And then he just says he acts like a butler, polite master, of course, master right away.
Yeah.
And then he says, and I'm going to kick you with my heel in your skull.
Rip your brain, rip your frontal lobe.
Yeah.
But no, yeah. I know it's just repeating points, but yeah, the character's really good. But just Sebas, that arc was so good. Like his I actually stuff like that makes me hope that we get arcs like that for all of them, because it's like fuck. Like more arcs involving these characters, just having development, right?
Yeah,
actual fucking development is just fucking great.
There is I was a super minor spoiler. In the third season, the first season when the tomb gets invaded.
Yep.
Nazarick takes some elves from that racist guy that had some elven slaves to sacrifice.
Oh shit, really? Oh, that's gonna be good.
Yeah, and they are put under. Basically, they become house servants for Mare and Aura. And those elves think of those two as royalty, because having those eyes, heterochromic eyes, is a sign of royalty. And then when you meet, you are introduced to the Elven King. He also has the same eyes. So an arc with Mare and Aura meeting the Elven King. Maybe they will become king and queen of the Elven Kingdom.
I like it.
Because Ainz is always like they should have spent more time with their own kind. Well, maybe it's opposite there. Oh, damn. King and queen. Didn't expect that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so that arc is that arc is being set up, so that's nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm foreseeing arcs of most characters.
Yeah, I fucking totally down for that. Very down for more character development in the character-driven show.
Or basically just spotlights.
Yeah.
Because Mare and Aura becoming king and queen.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. So let's keep going.
Is that he has to perform a balancing act of keeping her safe while maintaining the trust of his human-hating allies. Overlord is constantly coming up with new and interesting scenarios in which to use its characters, and new and interesting characters to use in its scenarios. According to his short bio on MAL, the series author, Kagane Murayama, is a Dungeons & Dragons devotee who started writing mainly because all of his friends were too busy to play with him, and that makes a lot of sense. He's clearly got an intense passion for creating lore, designing challenges, and getting into the heads of his characters, things that you pick up by sitting on both sides of the DM screen. He's also got a remarkable knack for descriptive narration that puts you right in his world, an essential skill for any good DM. That skill is mostly lost in the anime adaptation, but definitely comes through clearly in the light novels, which you can read on Bookwalker, but we're not quite there yet. The entire character concept from a manga echoes that experience. He takes on the role of both Overlord, or DM, and player at various points throughout the story, and he's got a strong devotion to preserving the concepts and ideas that he and his friends created for Nazarick, which is essentially a big role-playing campaign that they made within the world of the game they were playing, seeing it as a way to keep their spirit alive. It makes you wonder if some of the incredibly detailed lore and character backstories we see in Overlord aren't recycled from past campaigns that Murayama played with his friends. Either way, despite focusing on a large rotating cast of characters instead of on a single party, Overlord definitely gives off the personal, handcrafted feel of a really good tabletop campaign. Every story arc feels like a really well-planned quest, designed around the characters who are going to be involved in it and set up to give them some really cool surprises.
A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he likes playing D&D. The spells are based, and you see it in the races are basically D&D, the spells are D&D, the alignment is D&D. The class system isn't D&D at all. Most the spell ranking is D&D, and some spells are D&D probably, but besides that, it's not really. Cocutus is based on D&D, but saying that every arc is like a quest.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in those arcs that definitely would not work on the or at the table because there's only so much intrigue you can put in where it becomes just too complicated and too cumbersome to really like navigate through as a player. It's a balancing act. It's not like, oh, dumbing things down because your players are stupid. No, it's more like you don't want to have it feel like a novel.
Yeah. And this is very much a novel. The whole third season is one big conspiracy with Flugel, the Empire Royal Wizard.
Here's the thing, though. If one of the major aspects of tabletop culture in Japan is they have these things called replays, right? And they're novelized versions of campaigns set in certain systems. Like I know somebody translated one of the Call of Cthulhu, or two of the Call of Cthulhu ones from over there, and they have it for various systems. And famously, Record of the Lodos War was based off of a replay of a first edition Dungeons and Dragons, I believe, something along those lines. And so saying that this was just recycled from that would kind of not fit how they approach the tabletop gaming over there.
Yeah. Oh well, let's keep going. We're almost there. 4 minutes left.
Like it would advertise itself as a replay.
Yeah,
absolutely,
but also don't worry. The last few minutes are ads. So
true.
Great.
True. Alright, let's keep
going. Which is kind of the perfect format for the tighter constraints of an episodic light novel publication. The trade-off for this is that, like many role-playing...
Overlord isn't a episodic light novel.
I was gonna say.
Well, I mean, he says the anime, it works as an episodic light novel adaptation, but the storylines of the novels are basically multi-core, multi-season at this point.
And then there's the whole multiple things happening at once, jumping around time frames, as we
like I said last time, Overlord doesn't say how much time has passed. Or
stuff that works fine in a novel perspective, but in an anime perspective, it's a bit harder to, like if things are not happening in chronological order, then it kind of causes.
Or you don't say how long it took at all.
Yeah. It's the difference between written and visual medium. Like, because when you're in a written medium, your brain kind of fills in some of the gaps, whereas in a visual medium, it's a bit different. So, yeah. Let's see how it goes.
Campaigns, Overlord suffers from a lot of and-then storytelling. Instead of having plot developments evolve naturally out of characters' prior actions, the series often just goes, well, that happened, and then this other thing happened, which doesn't exactly make for the most satisfying narrative through-line. Though, to the series' credit, for the most part, once the inciting incident of a story has happened, the plotting usually becomes a lot tighter and more organic from there. But I don't think that most Overlord fans are watching it for the plot. And while the plot is certainly good enough to hold...
So, he's saying that we are not following Overlord because of the plots, the things that happen in the story. I'm not interested in how Mare and Aura will become king and queen. Not at all.
We're not interested in what happens to these characters at any given moment in the greater. He does realize that each of these individual arcs do actually contribute to a larger narrative, right?
It's or
like that's how plot works, Jeff.
Yeah.
So yes, we are interested in the plot.
Yeah, we kind of are. Again, it's the idea of it goes back to what we mentioned before. It's more of a character-driven show, but there are plot lines within those character-driven moments and stories.
Yeah, there are things happening, and people care about what's happening. Yes, people absolutely care about the plot. What are you talking about?
Maybe I have a brilliant insight. Just see this as a big, contained MCU where each character gets its own arc.
Let's not talk about the MCU.
No, but well, I get where you're coming from. I think
the copyright for Albedo is going to be pulled in by Sony, and then we're never going to see her again.
Oh no!
What topical humor? It's going to date this video.
A little bit. So yeah, let's see. Let's watch some nice boob grab and continue.
Hold a certain demographic's attention. I'm personally quite charmed by the concept of cute monster girls who are, in fact, quite legitimately scary monsters. I don't think that's the main draw either. The core appeal of Overlord, for me at least, is the appeal of any good pulp fantasy book, or especially any good RPG. The fun of meeting many interesting, colorful characters and immersing yourself in an unfamiliar magical land. Of escaping from your mundane life for a little while and going on an adventure full of trials and tribulations. And I think that it's able to sell that more effectively than most other anime about games, because it's more focused on entertaining its audience than letting an author insert character live out a power fantasy. Though there is still a bit of that, and the protagonist is insanely overpowered. Is it perfect? Brilliant? Not really, but I think that it scratches an itch for fans of high fantasy that other isekai series, and most other fantasy anime in recent memory for that matter, just don't. And it has a lot of fun doing it, too. We really need that counter. Though I will say that the light novels, which have plenty of great character moments and little details that were cut from the anime, scratch that itch even better. And they're a great read overall.
I somehow disagree with basically most of what he says. Maybe just the tone of it. The manga isn't necessarily a self-insert character, but he's basically a personification of the power fantasy of being an overlord, and everything will be fine despite you messing up. I'm looking at that first party that manga joins. I'm reminded with the short-haired character who becomes very relevant in the third season, and he has the audacity to say that these are self-contained single quests story.
Yeah, I agree. Like, that's actually one of the things that the writer does really well, is throwing back to, bringing things back, right? Stuff that's happened it has lasting effects. Even if it doesn't seem like it is such a massive thing at the time, later down the line it might come back and be like a oh fuck moment,
And I don't think that manga, even like him being a bit of an insert for the reader, in a power fantasy, is necessarily a bad thing, because the novel kind of acknowledges that. It shows him as being kind of out of his head, and like even in the show it shows him as being kind of out of his wits. So like I can't really say it's something that's necessarily negative. A lot of people seem to think that, self-inserts are inherently negative, and while with an unexperienced author, it can absolutely be bad. In the case of Overlord, I actually do think they handled that well, and it does contribute to a better story overall. Like, yeah, I don't think that the manga having a detailed past and clearly not being a self-insert would have helped the story along at any point.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think definitely it could depend on the execution, right? Like anything can really be done well even if it is self-insert or whatnot, as long as the execution is pretty good. But yeah, let's get into some advertisement, shall we?
Murayama's descriptive prose adds a lot of texture to the world, and the jaw-dropping, painterly illustrations created by artist So Bin would feel right at home on the cover of a heavy metal album or D&D book. As good as this show is, I'd argue that the light novels offer an even better experience overall. And if you want to read them for yourself, there has never been a better time to get into them, because
God, I love, you can hear it in the tone of his voice when he switches on the advertisement mode, right? Like the moment he switches gears from reading the script of the video to reading the advertising script, it's so fucking fascinating. And here are
the
and you can get this, and you can get it on Bookwater. You know, like you can feel the shill, right? It's so thick.
I like how Internet Historian does his ads, where it's a skit.
Yeah,
and they're genuinely pretty funny.
It's a good skit. It's not like fucking green explanation point bullshit. Like, hell, I'll even give Mother's Basement credit here with this shill, right? Like, this is better than explanation point and what he did. Right?
Yeah, no.
I mean, he's put it at the end of the video. It's clear when the transition happens, right? Like, it's not like, I mean, I don't know if we want to keep going and critique the shell or not, but
no, I don't.
Because we could.
I'm not really interested in how he sells advertisements.
Oh, well then we could probably cap it off here then. Since he seems to be moving into it. But like, that's the thing, right? Like, I mentioned this in the explanation point video. If you're gonna shill, that's fine. Just do it right. Don't do it like make a big deal out of it, like with Mother's Basement here. Like he's mentioned like the shill maybe twice in the whole video, right? He mentioned it once when he talked about the light novels, and then he's mentioning it now when he's getting into the actual shill. Like, it's about a minute long, so it's probably not too bad. Like, it's, you know, there are ways that you can shill and not be obnoxious about it and be annoying about it. And one of the reasons people critique a lot of people like Mother's Basement who do the shilling is oftentimes they are just obnoxious about it, and it's annoying. So,
but this is a capitalist society. How else am I supposed to make money? You're watching videos for free.
Fucking
anyway.
Fake. He's making money off of the system and thus perpetuating it. Oh, what a fake communist.
No. But it's fucking nuts. So anyway, I think we've pretty much gone over most of the points that I reckon we need to cap it off.
Yeah, and I do recommend reading the novels, because I do believe they are better. Like I said the previous time, novels are better. But yeah, it does.
Read the book, damn it.
Yeah, read.
Damn it.
It does narrative tricks that I really appreciate. It has more character details, monologues,
and like
details.
And like a good D&D campaign, nobody reads the fucking book. Nobody but the DM reads the book.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, no, I think this video is not terrible. It's not the worst Mother's Basement video I've seen.
It's inoffensive and kind of boring. The Mother Basement's formula.
Yeah, it's inoffensive, it's kind of boring. He kind of goes over some of the same stuff twice, you know, like the typical Mother's Basement fare. I can't really find much to disagree with in terms of his points.
I do have another point where I don't know the audience of this video. Because
people who subscribe to Mother's Basement.
Yeah, but it's not for. I mean, you could say, oh, it's for people who don't know Overlord, but then he spoils and tells and shows you entire plot points and revelations.
It's for people to reaffirm their own opinions on the show.
Yeah,
they don't have to defend it themselves, because they can just point to this video after the fact.
But this is the most horrible. It's the most horrible type of video where it's not to learn something. It's not to explain
something to put on
just
the background. That's really it. Honestly, it's very unengaging.
Well,
Right.
I mean, we at least do some criticism.
At least you know, at least he isn't like defining his own terms at this point.
Like somebody else.